Phaishonne Danzi presents Brownies of Podiakeep. Pinella read books of all sorts, but she adored Old English folklore most of all. One book in particular, The Brownies of Podiakeep, she read multiple times. Her grandmother had given it to her. The book was very thick with colorful pictures at the beginning of each chapter. Pinella turned each of the severely worn pages with care. "I know it says fiction," her grandmother revealed, "but every single word is true. If a brownie does a favor for you, make sure you give a gift in return." Pinella's eyes widened when she heard this. She could not help wondering if brownies lived in her home. How marvelous that would be! "What sort of gift shall I give?" Pinella asked. The door to her bedroom opened. Instead of answering Pinella's question, Grammy rose from the edge of her bed with a look of guilt. "Good morning, Father," Pinella called. She was submerged in a jumbled pile of quilted covers. She hoped her father would not stay too long. She really wanted to talk to Grammy a while longer. "I don't want you filling her head with nonsense," he said sternly. "Podiakeep is a serious place. Pinella must concentrate on her studies. She must become a well-trained adult in an appropriate field of study if she is to succeed in life." Pinella's grandmother shrugged and walked out of the room. "I shall have you return to the madhouse if this keeps up," he called after her. With his mother out of the room, Mr. Wilder gave Pinella his full attention. "Good morning, dear heart. Did you sleep well?" "I slept well," she mumbled. "Why the long breakfast face? Are you hungry?" "I don't want Grammy to go away," she said. "Your grandmother is not going anywhere. I only make threats to keep her in line," he promised. "Those books she has you reading are nonsense. Nothing more." Pinella thought it was weird for a son to oversee his mother. She wondered if there would come a day that she too would be in charge of her parents. "Let me tell you a tale," Mr. Wilder began. Pinella sat up with a perky grin. The one thing she enjoyed more than reading a book is having a story told to her. There was once a brave boy who had a huge imagination. Like you, he spent many of his days reading. His life changed when he came across a book of magic. This book promised that the reader only needed to believe, and their wishes would come true. Within the pages of the book were spells of all sorts. One spell caught his attention. It was the conjuring of elves. The book described a complicated spell that called for several oddly shaped sprockets, premium ghost powder and the oldest pair of shoes belonging to the person who loves you the most. Now this little boy thought the spell was for entertainment until his mother suggested that it could work if properly performed. The little boy spent the entire summer trying to get the spell to work. No matter how hard he tried or how much he believed, the elves never came to visit him. When the boy returned to school in the fall, he had forgotten all that he had learned during the previous school year. Pinella waited patiently, hoping there would be more to the story. Instead of continuing the story, Mr. Wilder asked, "Do you know why the boy forgot his lessons?" "No, Father." The book had been a distraction. Mr. Wilder's face turned solemn. His story was not intended to entertain her. Mr. Wilder removed every book of fiction from Pinella's room and replaced them with books that a girl her age ought to be reading. Late that night, while everyone else slept, Pinella crept into her grandmother's bedroom. "Grammy," she whispered. "Are the brownies real? I need to know." Grammy could not have been happier that Pinella had asked. "They are as real as you and me. After tonight though, we shall never speak of them again. I don't want you to go away. I'm not worried about your father's threats. I spent time in the madhouse after losing your grandfather. It was my own decision." Grammy pulled the covers away. She was fully dressed. "We are going to deliver a special gift," she said. Pinella did not reply. She was concerned about waking her father. He certainly would not approve of her stirring so late into the night. Grammy opened a tiny box. Inside was a white powdery substance that smelled like vanilla. "What is it?" Pinella asked. "It's a useful gift," she whispered. "A brownie is expected to be born any day now. They will need milk." "Will we see them?" Pinella asked excitedly. "Shush." Grammy warned for the sake of keeping the brownie's existence a secret from the rest of the family. Pinella covered her mouth as though that was the only way to keep more words from escaping. She followed Grammy to the closet. It was empty. Pinella wanted to ask what had happened to Grammy's things, but that was too risky. She would surely wake her father. She decided to ask the next morning. Grammy lit a candle and walked deeper into the closet. After 20 paces, Pinella realized that this was no ordinary closet. "Where are we?" Pinella asked. "We're going to a secret place." "Quiet now." "Just a little farther," she replied. After a time, Grammy stopped and blew out the candle. Pinella grabbed the back of Grammy's dress so that she would not be left alone in the dark. Then a magical thing happened. The walls were glowing. And the candle was no longer needed. Just ahead was a tiny door. "That is where Grammy left the gift." "Shall we stay to make sure they get it?" asked Pinella. "No. Brownies do not wish to be seen," Grammy insisted. "We must leave now." When they reached the closet door, the walls stopped glowing. Grammy closed the door tightly. Then she opened it again. Pinella peeked inside. There were hat boxes, shoe boxes, and many articles of clothing inside. Pinella pushed a row of sweaters aside and found a wall. "But how? Is it magic? How will I find the pathway when I have a gift for the brownies?" "Do you have a gift?" Grammy asked. "Well, no. I haven't received a favor yet." "Then you do not need to find them. Get your rest." "There's no time to discuss it now," Grammy insisted. Pinella crept back to her room. Her mind raced with many unanswered questions. Amazingly, she drifted off to sleep quickly. Pinella, Mrs. Wilder called first thing the following morning, "Your girls want breakfast." Pinella was all too happy to get out of bed. She looked forward to Grammy explaining how to find the brownies again. "I'm coming," Pinella said. "It would help if your cats didn't roam the entire house. Their footprints are all over my counter," Mrs. Wilder complained when Pinella stepped into the kitchen. "Now I have to clean it again." "Come on girls," Pinella said, letting the mother cat ride on her shoulder. The kitten was not so easily convinced that she should cooperate. She only decided to come along after Pinella opened a bag of her favorite food. Mr. Wilder came into the kitchen with his electric shaver to ask how long it would be before breakfast was ready. "Does anyone around here have an ounce of respect for my kitchen?" Mrs. Wilder asked. "I do," said Grammy, taking a soapy cloth and wiping down the counter. "Good morning, Grammy," Mrs. Wilder said sweetly. "I was referring to my husband and daughter." Mr. Wilder cleared his throat. "How did you sleep last night, Mother?" he asked as if he knew something. "I slept well, once I actually turned in," she said, unmoved by his inquiry. "I didn't," he revealed. "I heard voices and footsteps late last night." "Really?" Grammy asked. "Did you bother to investigate?" "I'm investigating right now," he said. "I think we should all have oatmeal for this morning's breakfast," announced Mrs. Wilder. "Oatmeal is mush," Mr. Wilder complained. "It's not mush. It's good for your heart." Mr. Wilder grumbled on his way back to the bathroom. "Thank you," Grammy said as she gave Mrs. Wilder a hug for changing the conversation. "You're welcome. Your son is always uptight about every little thing." "I can't imagine who he gets it from," Grammy said. "I appreciate you for sharing stories with Pinella," Mrs. Wilder said in a hushed voice. "Her father is right about one thing. Podiakeep is a serious place. That's exactly why she needs a bit of fiction in her life. Grammy did not explain that the stories are real. She thought it was best that her son and daughter-in-law did not know the truth. The brownies were safer that way. Later that afternoon, Lauren stopped by to share a poem with Pinella. Pinella listened and waited patiently while her friend read her poem. "Have you ever heard of brownies?" Pinella asked after giving an honest compliment. "I have," Lauren answered. "I prefer them with walnuts." "No. Brownies. The small people that live." Pinella wasn't sure where they lived. Grammy hadn't explained it yet. "Grammy says if they do a favor for you, you're supposed to give a gift." "Oh," Lauren replied, "you're talking about those folklore creatures. Have you ever met one? Seen one?" Pinella asked. "Of course not. Nobody ever sees them. But one did live in our house for a short time." "Are you kidding? When? What kind of gift did you leave? What happened to it?" "Slow down," Lauren laughed. "I'm not kidding. It was last summer. I left raisins. And most importantly, brownies are not to be referred to as it. They are people." "Where is the brownie now?" "Our house was remodeled. Afterwards, the brownie left." "If you never saw them, how do you know they left?" The raisins started to pile up. "We have brownies," Pinella revealed. "Really? Well, Grammy does. She left powdered milk for a new baby." "That's exciting." "Well, it would be, except I don't understand how to find them again." Lauren laughed. "You don't just find them. They find you." "What does that mean?" "You'll never know it, but they are always watching you. If they like you, they will do you a favor." "What favor did they do for you?" "Homework." "How?" "I was failing math last year," said Lauren. "I remember that." "Well, my math homework had mostly wrong answers. The next morning, I found tiny sheets of paper with the right answers." "How did giving you the answers help you?" They also explained a simple way of doing math problems. Pinella wanted to know everything about Lauren's brownie, but Lauren said she had chores to do. "I'll call you tomorrow," she promised. Pinella went to her room for a nap. She was surprised to find Grammy there. "Hello, Pinella," she said. "It's time." "Time for what?" asked Pinella. "It is cold inside the walls of this house." "That is no place for an infant," said Grammy. She stepped aside and Pinella saw 3 tiny people on the middle of her bed. "Brownies," Pinella whispered. "Indeed," said Grammy. "I thought we couldn't see them." "They can be seen by those who have earned their trust," Grammy replied. "I am Pinella," she said, walking slowly towards the bed. "You are welcome to stay as long as you wish. Your father can never know. Their secret is not safe with him. Your mother mustn't know either." "You're wrong about my father. He would welcome them." "I'm sure of it," insisted Pinella. "He told me about the elves." "Your father never truly believed." "Maybe some people need to see in order to believe." "I don't believe my eyes," Mr. Wilder said. Pinella spun around. "Father." Mr. Wilder walked over for a closer look. "They can no longer live in the walls," Pinella pleaded. "Can they stay?" Mr. Wilder had spent much of his life convinced that his mother was mad. He realized that she had told him the fictitious story about the elves to protect the brownies. "Of course, they can stay," he replied.